Here at T.Rex Arms, we have ammunition and keep track of the stock because we use it for a lot of testing purposes and other various business activities. Most people collect and stockpile ammunition for casual plinking at the range, and that's what we hope that it's used for. But other people keep it for other purposes. On an unrelated note, why do we like dystopian fiction so much? Reason number one is really simple. People like escapism. They would like to read books or play games or watch movies or think about a world that is a little bit different than their everyday life. And that means that we look for exciting places, alien, historic, or maybe futuristic dystopian worlds where authoritarian states have really complex rules and enforcement.
63410, wait for 32. Now the 5552.
Or maybe everything has fallen apart and we have a collapse where there's a post-apocalyptic scenario and everything is just fallen apart. And I sort of put these in two different categories. We have our dystopian future with the large totalitarian system, or that collapse where everything has just gone completely Mad Max or whatever. And those are two things that are just a nice set piece for cinema or games or books to some extent, because cinema loves spectacle. Love something that's big and visually interesting and looks different, and these are two things that sort of capture the imagination of art directors and viewers alike. So it's a fascinating place to set your story. Fascinating place, brand new city, killer robots. It's always interesting.
He say you brain rundown.
Tell him I'm eating.
Or everything has fallen apart and the only thing that has survived are apparently biker gangs and hot rodders. Number two, these are a pretty simple, interesting way to talk about complicated concepts. Now, the level of complication may vary. Sometimes they're just simple, schlocky movies that there's not much going on underneath the hood. Godzilla, for example, is a movie where people are worried about radiation in Japan for some reason. In the 1950s, we get a bunch of pretty schlocky movies about whatever was in the headlines. Cold War related stuff. George Romero comes to mind. His zombie movies are not that complicated and they change all the time. Every time he makes a new zombie movie, it represents a new thing, and he sticks pretty closely to what is really topically in the headlines at the time. But dystopian literature can be much deeper and more complicated. You're probably thinking of 1984, which is a really important work for discussing and talking about and thinking about and giving people pictures of what a really horrifically tyrannical society might look like. And another great counterpoint to that is Brave New World. Equally famous, equally tyrannical government, but it shows two different ways that these could be achieved. In 1984, Big Brother governs through fear and through pain and through forced compliance. And then over here in Brave New World, Huxley has a world that really governs and tightly rules its people using pleasure and using entertainment and using distractions. A completely different way to explore some of these ideas. And we have been interested in dystopian fiction for a while. I did a little bit of research recently, and the very first dystopian novel that has all of these sort of hallmarks is actually a short story from a guy named Jerome K. Jerome, who's not a horror novelist, he's not a futurist, he's not H.G. Wells. He is a comic writer, and he writes a little 4-page story, and it's got all the beats. It's got a futuristic society that requires total uniformity. You must wear uniforms. You no longer have a name, you have a number. You have the same haircut as everybody else. There is androgyny. The family has been completely destroyed in the name of equality and democracy. This is an interesting idea for him to explore in the year 1891, but all of these elements appear in other dystopian novels later on. Jack London has an interesting book called The Iron Heel, and it's interesting because he actually puts names to specific political movements in his book and then shows how they develop over hundreds of years. This again, early book, 1908. So complicated ideas are interesting to experiment with and flesh out in fiction. That's part of the reason that at T.Rex Labs we talk about movies a lot of the time. It gives people a little bit of a picture, a little bit better of an understanding of the concept. They can visualize it, create a little bit of a shelf that they can put new ideas on in their brain. Now your chaos and collapse movies over here, your post-apocalyptic nightmare fuel, those are usually a little bit less complicated. They don't have the strong political ideology, they're not the same type of cautionary tale, but nevertheless they do explore human beings, the way that they think and the way that they act in different types of situations. And they, I think, really flesh out and explain reason number 3 that we like dystopian fiction, which is the depressing one.
2 men enter, 1 man leaves.
That third reason is that this type of fiction presupposes that man is evil at heart, intrinsically wicked. And this is something that we know deep down inside, and that's why these stories resonate with us. We know that things don't just get better and better and better by themselves over time. We know that there are people who desire to have complete and total freedom from any kind of rule, and left to their own devices in an opportunity where there is complete anarchy, they are just gonna hurt other people and make guitars that shoot fire, stuff like that. But then on the other hand, we also know that in this innate desire for control and for power over other people, we're going to create governments that, if they're not limited, are going to expand. Power is going to corrupt, and absolute power is going to corrupt absolutely. That's something that becomes very clear in all the dystopian futures where there is a giant and all-powerful state.
The disease is human emotion. There is a cure for this disease, and you, as a society, have embraced this cure. Prosium.
These have a lot of resonance with readers because we know that these are true or accurate statements of how people behave, how they would behave in this circumstance, or how they would behave in this circumstance.
The only way to be happy is for everyone to be made equal. So, we must burn the books, Montag. All the books.
Even if you believe in your head that people are basically good at heart and that they just need to be left alone and educated properly and watched properly, you know deep down that these movies are how things actually go when people either build or destroy, when people have infinite order to foist upon other people or infinite chaos to inflict upon others.
Dun 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 dun. Little pig, let me in.
And I feel like zombies are the perfect example of what I'm trying to communicate here. When zombies first appear in the George Romero movies, they're very scary. They're a very simple, easy monster to create because you just spread a little bit of strawberry jam on people and you got horrible, shambling undead.
And developed symptoms similar to those displayed by their attackers. If you know,
people didn't resonate with that fear of zombies quite as much. If you see how the genre develops, the zombies are never the primary threat as we go on. They are an environmental hazard, they are deadly, they are scary, but it's the other humans who represent the real danger. The zombies will kill you, sure, but the other people are the ones who will destroy everything that you love and you care about for either your cans of beans or a new opportunity to create a new order that will control everything on planet Earth.
Anybody else have any questions about the way things are gonna run around here from now on?
Also, since I already know you're arguing about this in the comments, I'll just ask it. What do you think the George Romero zombies represented? It's a trick question, because some different in every movie.
They're coming for you, Barbara.
Stop it! You're acting like a child!
They're coming for you.
Now, Shaun of the Dead proves that you can still do a zombie movie that doesn't have a giant conspiratorial enemy.
take Carl, go to Mum's, kill Phil, sorry, grab Liz, go to the Winchester, have a nice cold pint, and wait for all this to blow over.
But video games and other movies have shown that what resonates with humans watching the movies and playing the games is a fear of other humans more than ghouls.
Freeze. Freeze or die. Freeze or die. Okay. Drop all your stuff. Drop all your stuff. Turn around.
It's kind of fascinating to me. We have all of human history to teach us this, but even some of our most ridiculous pop culture media shows that we know deep down, man is evil. Man is intrinsically fallen and sinful and will degrade into horrible things if not held to a higher standard. And even the most pointless and meaningless, sugar-coated young adult versions of these genres make that clear. Even the ones where the tyrannical ruling classes are essentially the Met Gala.
Over 100,000 people craning to get a glimpse of this year's tributes. The importance of this moment cannot be overstated.
You know, there's no meaning to any of this, so I wanted to find the most meaningless thing that I could come to and join, and here I am.
But fortunately, it's not all meaninglessness, pointlessness, nihilism. There is something that gives me a lot of hope. The fifth reason that these types of stories resonate with us. Reason number 5 is that we love to root for that underdog who does hold himself to the higher standard, that resistance fighter who is going to oppose chaos and tyranny.
Not without incident. I'm coming.
And you can see this shake out in all kinds of different versions of these genres. Movies, television shows, books, and video games. Oftentimes there are two small groups, people who are fighting to destroy or take control and people who are fighting for liberty and freedom. And then large masses of people in the middle. Sometimes zombies, sometimes sheeple, it depends. But as long as people are drawn to these sorts of stories because they want to identify with that hero, with that self-sacrificing person, that guy or gal who is in this for more than just mere survival or mere control or mere conquest, but actually wants to uphold a higher standard and actually wants to defend others, then I think that that is a very encouraging reason for us to continue to talk about these things and see these things developed as franchises owned by giant multinational corporations.
Oh no! Oh no!
Because there's also an element in which it's interesting to see what giant multinational corporations, what media giants would like certain messages to be explored rather than others. But it's also really interesting to see what particular messages, what types of exploration of these ideas are interesting to modern audiences. What is it that they want to see? What is it that they want to think about? That, I think, gives you a little bit of a read on where things are going in these different directions. But I want us to think about these things not in a general aimless way, not waiting for Disney to spoon feed us the particular thing that they want us to learn, but to really think through what are the main takeaways and use these as opportunities to consider aspects of complex ideas, slavery and tyranny and freedom and liberty and resistance and heroism and all that kind of stuff. Because it can be more than just zombies fighting Jedis or, you know, whatever the next flavor of the week is going to be.
The Jedi are bad. The Jedi are good.
This isn't about good or bad. This is about power and who is allowed to use it.
Billions of dollars are spent on this genre alone in the entertainment industry across movies and books, television shows, comic strips, all kinds of stuff. George Orwell's book, 1984, was a massively influential work, I think because it created in people's minds such a distasteful, horrible future that they wanted to resist certain kinds of totalitarianism in the 20th century. Obviously, not all kinds of totalitarianism in the 21st century. But this is where engaging with the ideas is really important. Don't just be the mindless consumer. Don't just look for pure escapism. Think about what some of these ideas actually mean. Think about what they are actually communicating. The goal here is that you not just be one of the masses, that you not be one of the zombies, but that you actually be the hero. You actually be that selfless person who is holding themselves and others to a higher standard, even at great cost. That's the mission. While I got to here, I need to recommend to you a book, or at least that you know about a book. A dystopian future novel called This Perfect Day, which I had never heard of before, and I've read quite a few of these things, but a friend of mine gave it to me, and it kind of creeped me out for reasons that you probably don't expect. It isn't just that it's a pretty decent book in its own right, it isn't just that the dystopian future world is horrific and surprisingly like our own, but there's something else bizarre and unbelievable about this book, and various things about its creation. And if you want to know more, check out the T.Rex Talk podcast. You can look for it on Spotify, and I promise you, you'll find at least the beginning of that podcast pretty interesting.